In the world of the Viking, strength was prized above all else. Men were taught to fight from a young age, to be brave in battle, and to never back down from a fight. To the Vikings, enemies were everywhere. But what if I told you you have no enemies? What if I told you that in the Viking world, there was another way to approach conflict? In this video, we'll explore the story of Thorkel, a Viking warrior who was able to navigate the violent world of the Vikings without making enemies. Throughout his story, we'll discover the importance of diplomacy, strategic alliances, and finding common ground with others. And we'll see how these lessons can be applied in our own lives, even today. So, sit back, grab a mug of mead, and join us on a journey through the Vinland Saga as we explore the power of building bridges instead of walls. The concept of enemies is often used to describe individuals or groups that we perceive as being against us or our interests. We tend to see them as a threat and act accordingly, often by trying to defeat or harm them in some way. However, this way of thinking can be problematic, as it is based on an illusion that the people we see as enemies are fundamentally different from us and are out to harm us. In reality, the notion of enemies is often a mental construct, a way of framing our relationships with others that are based on our perceptions and biases rather than objective reality. We may see others as enemies based on superficial differences, such as race, religion, or political views, but these differences are often far less significant than we think. Moreover, the idea of foes can be used to justify acts of violence, aggression, and discrimination, as people believe they are acting in self-defense or in the interest of their group. This can lead to a cycle of violence and retaliation, with each side perceiving the other side as an enemy and responding in kind. The illusion of adversaries is a theme that is explored in the anime manga series Vinland Saga. The protagonist, Thorfinn, initially seeks revenge against his father's killer, Askeladd, and sees him as an enemy. However, as the story progresses, Thorfinn realizes that his perception of Askeladd as an enemy was based on a false premise, and that he is more similar to Askeladd than he initially thought. Thors is a skilled warrior who is admired and respected by all who know him. However, he is also a man of peace who believes in the value of life and abhors violence. Thors introduces the idea of no enemies to his son, Thorfinn, in a conversation they had while watching a flock of birds fly overhead. He tells Thorfinn that the birds are not enemies, but rather fellow travelers on the same journey. He explains that the world is not divided into friends and enemies, but rather people who are all trying to find their place in the world. The world isn't divided into enemies and allies, Thorfinn. Everyone is just trying to find their place. There are no enemies, his dad says. Violence begets violence, Thorfinn. It's a never-ending cycle. But if we choose not to fight, we can break that cycle. We can create a new way of living, one based on understanding and compassion, Thor says. While seeking revenge may provide a temporary sense of satisfaction, it often comes at a high cost, both for the individual seeking revenge and for those around them. The cost of revenge is not just an abstract concept in Vinland Saga. It's a visceral, gut-wrenching reality that the characters face head-on. The series doesn't shy away from showing the physical and emotional toll that seeking revenge takes on individuals. Thorfinn becomes so consumed by his desire for revenge that it completely overtakes his life. He becomes a shell of his former self, willing to risk his own life and the lives of others in order to achieve his goal. And even when he finally achieves his revenge, it's a hollow victory that leaves him feeling empty and lost. But it's not just Thorfinn who pays the price for his obsession with revenge. His actions have a ripple effect that impacts those around him, including his friends and family. His desire for revenge ultimately leads to a cycle of violence and retribution that engulfs everyone in its path. Revenge is often a self-perpetuating cycle. Seeking revenge can create a never-ending cycle of violence and retaliation, with each act of revenge leading to another in a never-ending spiral. It's a sobering reminder that revenge doesn't harm the individual seeking it, but also innocent bystanders who get caught up in the crossfire. In contrast, the series also highlights the power of forgiveness and letting go of the desire for revenge. When characters are able to move past their need for revenge, they are able to find a sense of peace and healing. This is exemplified in the character of Thorfinn's father, who forgave Askeladd for his actions and ultimately found a sense of purpose and meaning in life. There's a powerful moment when Thorfinn meets a slave who challenges his worldview and helps him see the world in a new light. The encounter takes place when Thorfinn is working as a mercenary in the Byzantine Empire. He comes across a group of slaves who are being mistreated by their owners, and he decides to intervene. One of the slaves, a young girl named Hild, stands out to Thorfinn. Despite the abuse she has suffered, she is still able to find joy and meaning in life. She is kind and compassionate, and her resilience in the face of adversity inspires Thorfinn. Through his interactions with Hild, Thorfinn begins to question his own beliefs about violence and revenge. He realizes his single-minded pursuit of revenge has left him empty and alone. He sees that despite her circumstances, Hild is still able to find beauty in the world, and he starts to reevaluate his own priorities. One of the most prominent examples of the power of forgiveness is the relationship between Thorfinn and Canute. Early in the series, Thorfinn is consumed by his desire for revenge against Askeladd, the man who killed his father. He becomes a skilled warrior, but his anger and bitterness leave him isolated and alone. Canute, on the other hand, is a prince who is initially weak and unsure of himself, but who gradually learns to be a compassionate and just leader. Through a series of events, Thorfinn ends up becoming Canute's bodyguard and traveling with him on his journey. At first, Thorfinn is only interested in using Canute to further his own goals and revenge. But over time, he begins to see Canute as a person and not just a means to an end. As he gets to know Canute better, he learns about the trauma and pain that Canute has experienced in his own life. He sees that despite his weaknesses, Canute has a genuine desire to make the world a better place. This realization leads Thorfinn to start questioning his own beliefs about violence and revenge. Eventually, Thorfinn is able to forgive his father's killer, and he turns away from his desire for revenge. He sees that revenge only leads to more pain and suffering, and he realizes that forgiveness is the only way to break the cycle of violence. The power of forgiveness is also demonstrated in the relationship between Askeladd and Thorfinn. Askeladd is initially portrayed as a heartless and ruthless killer, but as the series progresses, we learn about his own tragic past and the reasons behind his actions. In the end, Thorfinn is able to forgive Askeladd for what he did, and Askeladd, who once was a killer, in turn sacrifices himself to help Thorfinn and Canute achieve their goals. Vinland Saga is more than just an anime about Vikings and battles. It's a profound exploration of the human condition, with themes that resonate deeply with audiences around the world. It challenges us to think about the nature of our own desires and emotions, and it encourages us to strive for a future that is not defined by our past. It shows us that even in the midst of darkness, there is always hope for a better tomorrow. As we reflect on these themes, we are reminded of the power of empathy, forgiveness, and redemption. These are not just concepts found in a fictional anime, but values that can transform our lives and the lives of those around us. If you liked the video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe, or a wild Thorfinn will be hiding under your bed tonight. See you next time.